but just the overall nitrogen management plan.
I think the DNR director's on.
Okay, we're going to get started, folks.
Wastewater management planning includes the large shellfish propagation program to remove.
Have we got enough chairs for people?
So I think she's giving an update on that for.
Yes, we do. Okay, folks, let's get started. I'd like to open this meeting of the Mashpee Board of Sewer Commissioners. It's February 10th. We're in the McQuaid Meeting Room, and we are televised, so your best behavior, Al.
Do my best.
It's always you.
Not me, huh?
I think we've got an audience today, so I think first, though, we will jump right into the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you watching on TV, we have everybody here at the table other than Meredith Harris, who I think is supposed to be calling in. So we have Chris Gallagher, we have Sue Donovan, we have Joe Lyons, Al Toll, Ken Dunn, and Ann Malone,
And Chair Mike Rapaz.
and myself. First item of business is the approval of the January 27th meeting minutes. Did everybody get a chance to look at those? Okay. Any discussion about those? All right.
Move to be approved as written.
Okay.
Second?
Aye.
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 Okay. Meeting minutes are approved for January 27th. Public participation. Is there anybody in the gallery here who wants to say something? Come on, Mary, get up here.
I know, don't give me that mic. Come on.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm here to see the presentation about the LCD.
As we all are. Okay, so let's jump right into that. And Evan, can you give us a quick, tell us what we're going to be hearing about?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the item on your agenda today. I'm accompanied by the town's consultants assisting us with the update to our comprehensive plan from Weston and Sampson, Caroline Wells and Ashley Sweet, who I'll turn it over to in just a minute. But we felt as we began designing the community engagement program for this comprehensive plan update, as we finalize the outlook for what the plan's development will be, to begin networking and discussing the plan's development with the requisite boards and commissions in the town. Today, I led a site tour with our consultants from Weston and Sampson, but also from Beta Group, who are sub-consultants for us on the transportation and circulation portion of our comprehensive plan. And the Sewer Commission and the Conservation Commission conveniently meet on the same Thursday, so we'll also be meeting with the CONSCOM this evening to do a very similar presentation. But we felt it would just be prudent to let you know a little bit about how we're approaching the plan's development, to share a little bit with you what the next 8 to 12 months will look like, to share a little bit of what we think might be opportunities for information exchange and collaboration, but also to establish somewhat of a dialogue with you all on the absolutely critical public works project you are undertaking at the moment. So with that, I think I would just like to introduce Ashley and Caroline to go through the presentation with you. We have control of the slides over here. Unfortunately, due to our AV limitations, the presentation is going to be behind you, Mr. Chairman, so we do apologize on that. I understand the projectors will be hopefully rectified at some point in the near future, but at least those folks who are watching from home will be able to see the presentation. So we're hoping that this discussion will really just give you a high-level overview of what we've done so far and where we're going, and then to facilitate somewhat of a discussion, if possible, towards the end of the presentation. And I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, just before I introduce and welcome up Ashley and Caroline, I don't know if people will be attending by Zoom, but if you want to start the Zoom meeting or not, I can get rid of it, but it's still sitting there on the screen, and I don't know if anyone was intending on participating remotely at your meeting.
We did have somebody, but they haven't called in.
And you have to hit the conference line. Would you like some assistance, Mr. Chairman?
I would love some.
All right, sure.
Will never
And you
be
can-
amiss.
And you can call me Mike.
All right, Mike, let's see. We need to go. Is anyone on the line? Well, we'll leave it on for now. We got to hit conference to start, and I'll start the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
And
Mike,
then if anyone is
If you
joining
sat
us.
over there, you'd be able to see it better.
Yeah.
You got the popcorn?
Can Meredith get in with the Zoom, or
You
she
should be able to, yes. Oh, I need a computer. All right, and Meredith is in. Meredith, are you on the line?
I can see your picture.
There she is. Can you hear us, Meredith?
I can, thank you.
Very good. All right, we're going to start a presentation in just a moment.
I am.
Can you hear us, Meredith?
I can, thank you.
Thank you. Very good. All right, we're going.
You're welcome.
Just a moment.
I am.
Okay, we should be situated with technology now, so if it's okay with you, Mike, I'd like to introduce Caroline Wells and Ashley Sweet, who are from Weston and Sampson, assisting my department and the planning board with the development of our local comprehensive plan. You guys have control of the slides from here.
Yeah. Can you grab it down? Yeah, or you could just do it. I can do it. Cool, thanks.
I'm going to do present mode. There we go.
Thanks. Are we all set? Should I wait? I think we're good. If I click, it'll go, right? Okay. Will it? No.
It's probably a scroll because it's PDF.
Aha. There
Thank
we
you.
go. What would we do
What
without
are we
you,
doing
Evan?
now? Technology. So, hello. I'm Caroline Wells with Weston and Sampson. This is Ashley Sweet, also with Weston and Sampson. I'm the project manager for this job, and Ashley is my deputy project manager. And this is a very similar presentation to what we did with the planning board, so if it looks familiar, it's sort of a pared-down version of that. We have this core team is the one that's actually working on your plan. We will be writing it, coordinating the data, analyzing the data, and working with you to establish a vision, goals, and actions for the plan. Behind us at Weston and Sampson is about 700-person firm full of a lot of expertise in wastewater management, water quality, transportation, building and facilities. So all of those experts also come to bear on your plan. Next slide, please. So a comprehensive planning project, if you don't know what a comprehensive plan is or you haven't read yours recently, it is both a process and a document. So it is a process that we go through with the community to understand the issues that they've already expressed in their studies and plans, the issues that they have not yet expressed in any public way. So there's both a data analysis piece of it and a public outreach piece of it. And that's what we'll be working on intensively in the next month. Right now we're gathering data, meeting with folks like you, and gearing up for a much more intensive, broad outreach to the public. Once we have those, we will analyze all of this various data and sort of synthesize it together. And from that, what we'll be looking for are emerging issues and emerging needs. And we will start weaving those together into a plan of action with actual action steps, the resources that you'll need, the funding needs, and also the potential sources of funding to accomplish what the town sets for itself to accomplish in the comprehensive plan. So, next slide. So as I always jump ahead on my slides, but as I just said, it is a plan for the future development, and we do tend to look at physical development, not that other social issues aren't woven into this, but our primary goal is to look at the physical management of the town, and with a particular eye toward the management of natural resources, especially in a place like Mashpee. So next slide. Here is our very high-level schedule. We went through the procurement process back in November, December. We are coordinating right now to get a project web page and all of the information that we will need to begin with outreach. We have gathered data, and we continue to gather data and read through it and synthesize it and summarize it. We're thinking mid-March right now, like for a full-on public launch, and we'll be pinning those dates down a little bit further for various workshops and actual in-person meetings that we will be having with the community. We hope to be in the plan preparation stage by early summer, knowing that we have a summer population that we're also going to need to talk to. And so we're not thinking of finalizing the actual planning, the final plan, until about September. But again, a lot of times when we go through a finalization of a plan, we're still in that sort of revision stage, and we're still improving it and getting it into the best shape it can be. Next slide, please. As I said, community engagement is a really critical piece of the whole planning process. As consultants, we might have a notion of what some of the issues might be, but it isn't until we actually start talking to community residents and boards and people with institutional knowledge about the town, what those issues really are and how best to frame them in the plan. So we will have in-person workshops. We will have what we call expert interviews and stakeholder interviews. So we'll find key people within the town who know things that we need to talk to. And then we'll do a series of public surveys, probably on, they used to do huge public surveys as part of a comprehensive planning process. I believe Mashpee did a great big survey back in 1998. We'll likely split it out into relevant specific topics so that people aren't overwhelmed. Next slide, please. The Cape Cod Commission identifies these place types as sort of a tool to communicate with the public so that people understand, okay, these are natural areas, these are suburban development areas, and the goal is to help foster conversation, but we know, obviously, that many places might serve dual roles or multiple roles, but it's just a way of communicating with the public. So what we're trying to do initially in this data phase is mapping current land uses and your zoning and getting a sense of what place types exist within Mashpee. Next slide. And committee roles, we are working with the planning board as our core committee. Their role really is to advise us and to keep us sort of moving forward in a productive way. And they will be reviewing all of our drafts that we produce and providing, ultimately, we'll be working with them to prioritize our implementation plan. So they'll be actually vetting through some of our recommendations on the vision, goals, and actions. Next slide, please. So what we look for is advice, review, and recommendations. So we start with our information and also sort of initiatives. We look at the town's strengths, its weaknesses, its opportunities, its potential challenges. We identify areas of concern and areas where we need to put more focus. And this is really sort of what I'm asking you all to help me with, like in this process, how we can best get this information. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it.
That's it. I'm going to leave this slide up because, as Caroline mentioned, this is kind of why we're here with you, is to first introduce the project and then let you know what we're going to be looking for from the Sewer Commission, the Conservation Commission, and all the other boards and commissions in town. We want you to share with us your information about initiatives, about strengths and weaknesses, areas we should focus on, areas that are of concern, that are relative to the work that you do, so that we can help incorporate all of that information into the plan. So there's a services and facilities chapter that will cover things like sewer and water. So we're here to talk to you about your initiatives, the work that you're doing, so that we can make sure that we accurately represent that work, the goals of that work, and any future initiatives that you plan to work on into the comprehensive plan in the appropriate places.
So that's enough of our talking. I mean, and it's not just about community facilities. Obviously, with a sewer commission and a wastewater planning, you're touching economic development, you're touching residential development, you're touching natural resources and sustainability. So, there's a broad brush of knowledge and expertise that we're trying to call out of that for this plan.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. So from a practical standpoint, how would you go about eliciting our contributions to shaping the plan and the final document? I mean, where do we dovetail in your process as you see it? I mean, today seems informational. I don't think we're ready with substantive comments today, right? Or I don't know. I don't think so. So maybe you could describe how that will move forward?
Sure. I'm hoping that we can at least touch on some very, very high-level issues today, and without going into too much detail. Largely with boards like this, it does become collaborative. Like, so we're gathering information and we're synthesizing it. What we do, and what we're actually doing right now in the next, week or two, is what we call existing conditions. So we're reading all of your plans and reports, and we're synthesizing it into what we see as the state of what is right now. So I think that the first foray would be that you would help us review that and make sure that we've really captured it, and if everything there is appropriately represented. And that might give you also, I hope it gives you the time to think about that potential applications. So you can see existing conditions as is, but where are we taking that? Because we're planning for the next 10 years. What is the next 10 years going to look like for your board, for your work, for the town? What other needs might there be that haven't been met yet, or challenges? All of those things need to be captured in the plan. And if you don't, and it's okay if you don't have that information, it's just a thought, that's okay. It's our job to kind of chase down the facts. So I hope that helps.
Would you like a 30-second thumbnail sketch of what we're focusing on?
Yes.
Okay. Ann, anybody want to take the lead on that? No?
Nope, I think that's for you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We are in the process of sewering a fair amount of the town. At the last fall's town meeting, we allocated funds for our what we're calling our Phase 1, which is kind of in central Mashpee, sewering and the construction of a wastewater treatment plant. In the meantime, we're preparing for what we'll call Phase 2, which is a significantly larger area, and it's meant to address not only the two estuaries, Papaneset and Quoit, but also the 4 ponds, which are suffering from poor water quality problems. So we are in the process now of winding down on all of the submittals that we need to make for the SRF funding, the state funding for Phase 1. And we're coming before town meeting in May to request funds to cost out what Phase 2 is going to look like, and also to do 25% design plans for Phase 2. And we're working with a very rigorous schedule, unusually rigorous, but we're determined to try and stick to it. And we're hoping we'll get shovels in the ground on Phase 1 this spring. That's unclear, could be summer. And if everything goes well with Phase 2, we would come back to town meeting in August. Well, no, we would propose another SRF loan, which we would apply for in August of this year, and keep that cycle going until we've completed all of Phase 2. After that, I think we're going to sit back and rest for several years.
Mike, could offer, I could give them, I'm in the sharing office with Evan. I could give you details and plans of where we're going,
That would be great.
That would be great.
you know.
We have some information, but we don't have it in the level of detail that we would want.
Yeah, I could sit down with you for
That would be great.
15 minutes or so, whatever you need.
Awesome, thank you.
And any other discussion, other committee members? No?
I have a question.
Go for it, Meredith.
Yeah, my question is, as our chair, our commissioner chair has presented this program or project, it's within only one part of the 10-year comprehensive plan. So my question is, how will the comprehensive plan writers incorporate ongoing plans with future goals, with what if it gets accomplished during the time that the plan is being written? How do you integrate all of that together so you're planning for a 10-year comprehensive plan? The last comprehensive plan is 24 years old. So how do we kind of get off the skateboard in a way where we're writing and doing and planning all at the same time to come up with a plan that the town people understand? Is that understandable?
It totally is, and you just sort of like pinpointed the full challenge of the plan, particularly in this realm, because you are in the process of sort of designing and building it, and what that looks like after sort of remains to be seen. One thing about the comprehensive plan is it doesn't necessarily answer every question. We always call it a living document. So there may be things we don't know. But what we do in the plan is we park it and we say, okay, this is the status of where we are now. Here's, at least we'll have short, medium, and long-term goals. So we might very well have a number of short and medium goals associated with that. We may not have those long-term goals really fleshed out. So sometimes we'll put in a parking spot like study this, create another plan, a miniature plan on this particular issue. So sometimes the recommendation for the comprehensive plan, unfortunately, is to revisit the subject later on and get the expertise and focus on that particular area. That could very well be the situation here, because you've just got such a huge undertaking in front of you that seeing past that might be a little fuzzy right now.
Thank you.
I wonder if your experience doing this, and I've read your credentials, so I know you've done a lot of these plans with different communities. One of the challenges, of course, is you referred to it as collaboration, but we have a lot of interlocking pieces here. We can't do our job without natural resources, the Board of Health, the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board. Have you found this process can help communities learn to synchronize their watches and to become mutually collaborative and vigilant about the steps that will, we're kind of bringing up the rear here, cleaning up a mess of many decades making. And a challenge beyond that is going to be, how do we revamp the way we operate so that we're not adding insult to injury going forward? And that's going to take the work of all the boards in town.
It really will. I think one of the greatest things about, and Ashley, feel free to chime in, one of the greatest things about watching comprehensive and master plans evolve is that often it is one of the few times that citizens actually sit around and talk about their own place and the way they live and the way they'd like to live, or they'd like their children to live in the next 10 years. It doesn't happen enough, and it certainly hasn't happened since COVID has been around, but it's amazing even when you have people who are politically divided and they come from very different places, but when they sit down and they start talking about, okay, this is connected to this and this is what matters, they actually can find consensus. That's what we're hoping for this process. It does take a lot of conversation, and it does take a lot of it just takes time. But it also takes open communication too. So if you all feel like, you have an emerging issue that should be relevant to the comprehensive plan, talk to Evan and have us come in, and maybe we can arrange a conversation with different groups just to find the answers to some uncertainties and to talk. That's what it's all about.
One of the main goals of a comprehensive plan as well is not just to identify, what's going on in each chapter of the plan, but like Caroline said, is to make sure that those chapters integrate with each other. So when we're talking about wastewater in particular, it does touch on what does that mean for economic development? What does that mean for housing development? What does that mean for natural resources? And our job is to get all of this information from you and make sure that we connect those dots throughout the chapters. And we make sure that when we're working on, each different chapter, we're seeing that common thread, go through those chapters and making sure that there is integrate. We don't want these things to act as silos. We want the document
Right.
to work together within each chapter and make sure that we are addressing within talking about wastewater, we're talking about natural resources, we're talking about housing, we're talking about how those different things touch upon each other and impact each other. So we need to get the information from you, and then it's our job to kind of string that all together and make sure that it's a cohesive document.
Thank you.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions for these folks? No?
I do.
Okay.
Can you identify yourself, please?
I'm Barbie. I sit on some town committees. I'm curious how you envision being able to really do the community outreach. Evan has talked about doing workshops or meetings or whatever. How do you do that do you have like a facilitator's training manual, or do you have a pattern of like how to do a workshop? For example, you can't be there, that, Evan could run the workshop, for example.
Well,
I mean, because if we want to do a lot of them, and like in each different neighborhood, for example,
right.
you obviously can't be at all of those.
Okay, I see where you're going. So certain workshops, usually the kickoff workshop is a bit formulaic. And so we come in with, 5 or 6 staff members. We've worked with Evan closely and the planning board to kind of structure what that's going to look like. And then we get that sort of initial input. Then there's a set of workshops kind of in the center of the process that are a little more amorphous. They can be tailored to whatever we feel like the needs are. Those are less scripted. And so, because it's kind of like, what are the questions that we need to have at that particular moment? What are the lingering questions that we want the public's input on? And we had identified kind of using the themes of the built systems, natural community,
Excuse me, we cannot hear any of the replies if you're turning and speaking in her direction. You have to take the mic with you.
Oh.
Sorry.
No problem.
You don't have to look at me.
Can you completely close this?
I'm told the track's broken.
Oh, in that case, I guess you can't.
Thank you.
I hold the mic.
Yeah.
I hate to, but there are people watching.
Yeah. So what we can do in those situations, because you're right, we do certain like larger workshops, but if there are more finer grained or smaller conversations that need to be had, then we could work with either Evan or the planning board to either train, like for a certain exercise, we can do some targeted surveys, we can, do quick Zoom check-ins with people. There's any number of tools that we can use to kind of get that second level coverage. Does that answer your question?
That helps, thank you.
Okay.
How about Ashley and Glenn? Do you folks have any questions for them? No? I know Ashley and Glenn both have big changes coming to their programs, so you'll have to keep an eye on them.
So what would be the next steps for us as a commission to participate in working with you? How would you plan to come back to us?
I think that
Could you take the microphone off the stand and hold it in your hand?
There you go. Then people can hear it.
okay. We have our own reconnaissance, like to keep sort of synthesizing that information so that when we come back to you, we we have a set of questions that we really want to focus on.
Okay.
If you could potentially schedule a work session or a portion of your meeting where we could really kind of go over some of those in-depth questions, for us, that would be optimal. And I, however you want to work it. If you want to do it in person, you want to do it in Zoom, it's fine. But I feel like.
Could you send us some form of documentation you'd like us to review? Yes. And then we could schedule a meeting?
Yes, I think that would be the best next step. Unless you.
We meet the second and fourth Thursdays of each month.
Okay.
Is that better or no? No, nothing's happening.
It's pretty loud, but I think so.
How about that?
Oh, much better.
Much
Is that better? Oh,
Now you're on.
oh, I did? It's always
Now you
me.
need to start over.
If I might make a suggestion, you could contact me through Evan. I'll give you what our plans are and get you started.
Perfect.
I can get you everybody's email. You can formulate your questions and then work on scheduling a meeting and
Perfect.
send everything to everyone.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'm going to do this wrong. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan.
Ashley, since you're here, do you mind going a little early?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Ashley Fisher, Director of Natural Resources of the town. I just wanted to alert the Sewer Commission that the Mashpee Natural Resources and the Shellfish Division are currently reassessing the current shellfish plan for nitrogen removal due to the decline in water quality, the lack of suitable bottom habitat, and other environmental factors. The DNR is working to increase the seed stock availability to change over our gear to a more conducive grow-out gear for our area. And we are also trying to hold our aquaculture leases more accountable. The Mashpee shellfish regulations will be updated to include a minimum production value for all of our aquaculture leases within the town. We are also working to incorporate more aquaculture leases. And for example, currently today we have the Aquaculture Research Corporation here on our waterways looking for areas for potential grow out. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. The ARC will have the capability to grow millions and millions of animals at no cost to the town. They could
Ashley,
also,
you better explain that. I don't think people know what the ARC is.
sorry. The ARC is the Aquaculture Research Corporation. They are the sole seed supplier for the Cape and all of the aquaculture enterprises. There are some people in Maine, there are some people in Rhode Island and down in New Jersey, but we typically don't like to see that seed coming into the state of Massachusetts. So most aquaculture, private and municipal, use the Aquaculture Research Corporation in Dennis. Over the past few years, the Aquaculture Research Corporation has not been able to fill our order. Our order is quite high. It's at $9.72 million that we're looking to order each year. And this year we've exhausted all aquaculture hatcheries and we were only able to nail down about $5 million for this fiscal year. So working with the ARC, we could put test site FLEPSIs, which are floating upweller systems, where they can house their shellfish, and they're planning on doing that as early as this summer. So once we've reassessed our shellfish and what we can do, what the ARC is planning on doing, and what the aquaculture leases in town are capable of doing, we're going to come and we're going to revisit with the Sewer Commission and the Select Board to go over our revised plan. Do you have any questions for me?
Ashley, could you explain how the changing environment is affecting your ability to grow a lot of shellfish?
Yes. So for example, in the Mashpee River and in Shoestring Bay, we're seeing anoxic events, which is, there's no oxygen left. We see them go down so low in the nighttime for an extended period of time that we're seeing high mortality.
The area of both Mashpee River, Aquay Bay, and Shoestring Bay, the bottom is not suitable for seeding no longer. It is very thick muck, and the shellfish do not survive in that environment. So what we're proposing to do is, switch our gear, use a different method of grow out, so we can grow in those areas, but we cannot plant in those areas. They'll have to be moved to a recreational area with suitable bottom.
So the numbers that you were using, the millions, you're talking for the uninitiated, millions of animals that are in the plan to purchase annually in order to keep, what is it, a 3-year cycle of growth for the shellfish?
Yes, so we have to have in a minimum 3-year cycles in each area that we're targeting for cleanup, because that removal is based on a yearly basis. So we need to remove that exact same number of animals that we're purchasing per year.
Okay.
Ashley, can you explain the amount of nitrogen that a shellfish takes out and how?
Okay, so we all know shellfish are filter feeders, and they remove algae. Algae is their primary source of food, and that's where they are removing the nitrogen. Algae affixes the nitrogen to grow. It's a plant. It's a microscopic plant. It takes up nitrogen, and when the oysters feed on the algae, they in turn are removing the nitrogen by incorporating it into their shell and their soft tissue. They also have a process that they do by stimulating the bottom sediment. It's called denitrification. It's similar to what we see in our sewers, our septics in our home. Their pseudofeces is gravity pulls it to the bottom sediment, and what happens is it stimulates the microorganisms within the sediment and releases nitrogen into the air as nitrogen gas. That number is hard to nail down, the amount of removal. They always say it's higher than what they are taking up in their shell and their gut. So we do assume a low figure of 0.5 grams of nitrogen that they are able to denitrify through that process. And we also see 0.5 grams removal in their shell and their gut and soft tissues. So in total, one animal could be upwards of 1 gram of nitrogen removal once that animal is removed from the system.
Does anybody have questions for Ashley? No. Ashley, can you explain a little bit about the moorings and how mooring areas might affect the ability to grow?
Yes, so moorings and the boat usage in our area, we do have over 500 moorings in the town of Mashpee. We have a considerable amount of docks in the town of Mashpee, which is constricting us to smaller and smaller growing areas. So the solution for that is what I propose, a harbor management plan, which we were awarded through the Seaport Economic Council, and I will be appearing in front of the Lieutenant Governor this month. That will be a $200,000 project, and we will be working with the Urban Harbors Institute to try to consolidate our mooring fields to a more grid system so we could open up some shellfish areas for growing.
Nice.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for Ashley?
Yeah, is that so that the moorings and shellfish can share the same environment? Or is it just keeping them further and further apart?
That's the goal, because right now we're having some issues with the Division of Marine Fisheries and the FDA. They are closing areas that have boats or mooring fields in excess of 20 vessels or more. A lot of our mooring fields are 20 vessels or more. So in order to keep them open, the Division of Marine Fisheries is coming down and assessing the area for spillage, flow patterns, and if there's a suitable shellfish area, they're doing their best to keep those areas open. And what that requires is no overnight occupancy, which is something we passed at the previous town meeting. Right. So that will only help our effort in keeping those shellfish areas open. So gridding the system and moving moorings to more consolidated areas will be able to keep more areas open year-round.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the audience or commissioners? No? Thank you, Ashley.
And I just wanted to update the board. We did release our Mashpee Wakeby Diagnostic Study RFP, and we've released it to several entities. And we will be choosing the winner within the next few months of that proposal. And also the town or the division, my department is going to be going for a Santuit Pond resiliency article at the Maytown meeting. So I just wanted to update you on that.
Can you tell us a little more about that?
So yeah, it is a stormwater and a feasibility study for nutrient inactivation treatment for the pond. We know that Santuit Pond is, what's fueling the blooms is internal cycling of phosphorus. 78% of all of the phosphorus that's contributing to these blooms is held within the sediment. And we recently had a dredging feasibility study with the Army Corps of Engineers. And it was found that a majority of the pond could not be dredged because of the amount of material that would needed to be removed and the lack of sediment reuse certification that they could not receive. So the Army Corps of Engineers is proposing a smaller dredge area, but we're not sure whether the town as a town-tribe partnership will pursue that because it will not improve water quality. It will only improve habitat for the herring.
And is the material so bad that we can't use it again? Or?
Sediment reuse, actually taking it above water, is not possible. It would have to be disposed of at off-site location.
Okay.
And the original proposal was to impound and fill some areas of depressions around the pond, and that is not possible.
Is it possible to use the old Cranberry Bogs to increase the filtering of the nitrogen from the water flowing all the way down to Shoestring?
No, it's not.
We're getting a lot of nitrogen coming out of, and phosphorus compounds coming out of Santuit. They pass beyond the abandoned Cranberry Bogs, and they get into Santuit River that feeds Shoestring Bay. My question is, if we upgrade the Cranberry Bogs to be nitrogen sinks by letting them propagate vegetation, why isn't that a positive direction for our nitrogen control?
So that's a different question. Okay, it is. And the conservation agent and the Conservation Commission, I think they've received some funding to do the bog restoration of the top track bog and the lower bog. So yes, that will help. But they're in the process of looking into other funding sources to do so.
Excellent.
Ashley, quick question. The reassessing that you talked about at the very top of your presentation, for our purposes, that will lead eventually to a restated number for the nitrogen management plan that we've been working with.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mary had a question.
Mary Wagan. Ashley, you talked about an assessment made by the Army Corps of Engineers of the Santuit Pond. Is that a recent assessment?
Yes, so the town and the tribe were working together, and it was the dredging feasibility study that the Army Corps of Engineers were involved with.
Is that available for the public to look at?
Currently, there is only a draft available that would be made available, and they're hoping to complete the entire project January of 2023. So we've only had preliminary data.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any more discussion? Okay, Ashley, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I answered all your questions.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Glenn, did you want to say anything to the group? Don't mean to put you on the spot at all. Glenn is the agent for the Board of Health, for those of you who don't know him.
Oh, just to kind of follow up on our meeting last night that we had on a working session with the board and a couple of the select board members. And Mike was present as sewer commission rep. One thing that we looked at was, well, one of the select board members has been pushing to get the number of cesspools documented in town. And I guess what we're looking for there is, I guess we need to get a map. I'm back on the map again to see what streets are in phase 1 and what streets are in phase 2, so that we can discount those areas and then figure out those areas outside of phase 1 and phase 2, because that's probably where we're going to be focusing our attention for doing the upgrades to denitrification, but also to get these cesspools upgraded. So I guess I just need to try to nail down those areas that are proposed right now for phase 1 and phase 2, and then we can discount those areas, and those areas that have wastewater treatment plant discharges already, and then we can figure out and do our cesspool count and then start addressing those. So that's really where we're at right now with our next step, and we'll work on the regulations that Select Board member Gottlieb will come up and look at doing upgrades and denitrification for the other parts of town. So that's where we're at right now.
Joe, did you have a question? No?
I'll let it go.
Okay. Any questions for Glenn? He's got a lot on his plate.
Yeah.
Just, I could probably help out starting a street list, but once we get to 25% design, you'll have a complete list of streets.
Okay. Great.
And I think you have a map, or I'll give you another copy of the map that shows the outline of 2A through D and the streets that are within it.
We'll take whatever you give us.
Okay.
Glenn,
Yes.
do you know offhand what the status is of reopening the senior center? In terms of letting groups come in?
I don't know just yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
The next agenda item, I have to turn over to Ken and Ann and Meredith to talk about redoing our webpage, which is old and in need of repair.
All right, I'll go first. There's 3 areas, 3 questions. One was, I requested some procedures through of the town, how they want it done. Gee, really?
You really hold an audience.
Yeah. I'll tell you anything to it.
I didn't even say anything.
Of how we want to move through the procedures. You know, and as I explained to Mike, I'd rather ask permission on this one than forgiveness, because the webpage, it's so interconnected with all the other pages that you could just blow the whole thing up. And I don't want to be the one doing that. I'd rather have it Mike or Chris, so. So that's the first one, is getting some procedures. Second one was the documents that Mike in one of his emails signed in, and Meredith, so that's not mine either. The third one I did was the other agency contacts for the webpage.
Right.
I did send that list I made up around to it for comment. I did get some comments back from Meredith and from Ann. I've added a few to it of other agencies that they thought should be on the list. If you've got no problems with that list, I will then move it to Chris in the town to be put on the webpage.
Okay.
Is that a yes?
I think, can you send it around again?
I can do that.
A list that shows what entities we're going to put on our contacts list.
Okay.
And I would just suggest if everyone could look at them with an eye to the categories of groups that we're including, you know, and how far afield do we want to go? How much sense does it make to have a big, long list? Would some sort of, you know, selection rationale make some sense? Because the long-term purpose of this, of course, is not for us. It's for people coming to the website to find the kind of information that might help them think about these projects.
Right. I will do that. I will
I
send
have
it
a
out.
question. I have a question about that. And Ken, as we've talked about it, one of the things that we're looking for is some type of criteria for inclusion of the other agencies. One of the things that's very difficult in putting the website together is maintaining the links of multiple agencies. So I think we do have to be very careful about the numbers of agencies that we include, but I think that we somehow as a group have to come up with the criteria for inclusion. If we're saying we want to have groups that have anything to do with water, I mean, that could be too extensive. So I think we really need to come up with some type of criteria for inclusion.
Okay,
Well, what I did on all these links is I went back through and make sure they directly pointed to something that had to do with wastewater. I'm not gonna deal with the water or pond studies or something like that, just wastewater. And so that's why we'll cut the list out on a couple that I read, but all of them, if you go through them, the links are there directly, you can go right to them, they'll come up with a webpage talking about either water pollution or wastewater projects, things like that. So I did not want to include anybody who wanted to talk about water. I did include the only one I found that was pretty good on the ponds, I think, was the one that goes through the town of Mashpee on the Wakeby Lake Management Committee. And that was the only one that I found from all the other groups, except for, I'm sorry, Mashpee Clean Waters on Facebook. So, most of them, I just wanted to make sure they were pointing to information as opposed to, a lot of the ones we had on the prior webpage, I mean, they pointed to, it was like the Department of DEP, I think it was, and it just went to the DEP, which to me is useless because now you gotta navigate through the DEP to look for what you want in wastewater. So what I did on each one is pick out the page that would help. And I did put a couple, like the town of Falmouth, the town of Barnstable, that had good information pages that you could then refer to too. So I'll fix the list up and send it out to everybody. If you got any problems with it, let me know and we'll get that move along.
Okay.
All right. And Ian or Mike, you have anything else to add to?
No, I think the other major issue has been sort of kicking around ideas for the frequently asked questions, and we've got some versions in process and some conversation going on about that. And beyond that, I think the other piece that we've talked about is including some informational sheets like the SOPs that we've developed so that people have a one-page source to look at for things like, who's going to have to hook up and how are condominiums going to be treated and just those bits and pieces that we've already worked on.
Yeah, there's all those SOPs that if you fix those up, you can then include them in that one section. But I want to make sure we get a final version that looks appropriate for what you want to put out.
so like a header, have a header on it, a sewer commission header, or?
Yeah, like like that guy from the Board of Health. He does really nice, fancy letterheads and nice fancy stuff. So, something that looks better than just say sludge treatment or connection costs or something like that. Something like
I could put it on my letterhead and modify it from engineering to wastewater management.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk, that's a good idea. We can talk about that, and then these can be sewer commission advisories or sewer commission updates.
SOPs.
Yeah, whatever.
They could be all included in that. The one area that I had here that too, I think, is I included is, what was that document? Joe, help me with it. What was that? The sewer regulations?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
There's a spot for that too.
Rules and regulations.
Rules and regulations,
Right.
thank you, John. There's a spot for that too, if we ever
We need to
have
come
your
back to
final
that.
version. And I think that one's been.
We don't need the final. Put a draft version up. Get
I
it
can-
moving.
That's up to Mike and
That's
Tom
it,
to
but
approve.
that's
yeah.
how you make these things work. You put up the draft instead of talking about it and let people criticize it. Then you'll have a document that works. You don't ever put it up, it never gets
We
reviewed
have
and
to have a
criticized.
procedure before we put anything on there, though. That's the problem.
I think we also need to mesh with Glenn's work, and
Glenn's already reviewing it. Each department head should have reviewed, by now, should have reviewed the rules and regulations and put in their words, in their language. Now we would have a document. Chris forwarded it all to him 6 months ago.
So that's an
Let's
important
not go
document, I think, to get
backwards.
up there, so.
But just a point of order, by the way. Chris has a job to do, and he's up to his ears in alligators. I would suggest that we let Chris give his report, and any of the things that we need to detail language and stuff about, we can do after his report, instead of holding him up for the rest of the day.
Well, I think he gets the benefit of hearing all the great things we have to say.
And he is the one that we're gonna be working through on this webpage, so.
Right. I think we need him.
I mean, we're not gonna have a final version of the rules and regs. We kind of do now, but eventually you're gonna have to have your rate schedule and all this other stuff that goes in there, connection fees, and all that's, not to be, that's not gonna be determined for a while till we
Right.
start working on numbers and see how things come in. And then we'd have to, whoever does the O&M, I mean, that's
why I
till
can
you find
only,
out how much money you have to collect, because with an enterprise account,
it can only exist as a draft at this
yeah,
point.
yeah, I agree. And
But if you don't keep it as a draft and you don't publish it as a draft, you've wasted all of the time involved. Because you're gonna have to do it in the end anyway. Put it up, ask it for criticism, require the department heads to each review it. They get to learn how to speak the language, which is a critical issue that we're still missing. These department heads come in here and they don't speak the same language as we're learning how to speak. We've got to get this all into one language. And cooperation is paramount. Get drafts out so we can each see what is in each other's minds and then work them into definitive documents.
I mean, the draft is, from what's done, is pretty complete, and probably is not gonna go through much of an edit. But like I said, there's other parts of, when you do rules and regulations, when they're final is when we have, fee schedule, connection fees, well, we're not gonna have any I&I fees, but, and then once we pin down, because we'll have a contract with an operator once the plan gets up before everyone connects. And then basically you add everything up and you have to say it's $2 million to run that plant. You have to collect user fees and tie-in fees to get that money, to fund that. Eventually it will be just mostly all user fees because of the structure of how the tie-ins are gonna have to be done in a year. But, so eventually what you generate, like the first few years, the fees might be low. But then once they're all tied in, then the fees are gonna go up because it's all your operation and maintenance of your plant, your piping, and any staff you may have. But that's how you set it up. And I'd imagine, like, the expense to have me on board may still come out of the town and not come out of the enterprise fund. But that's how it's set up financially. It's totally separate from the town tax base. It's a total separate account. And that's, with an SRF, you have to have an enterprise fund, and it's supposed to be to fund what it costs you to do it. If you start building up too much excess money, your rates get lower. If you don't have enough, you bring them up. And that's by design how an enterprise account works, and we're gonna need all those numbers before we really finish the regulations.
Chris, if you're happy with the way they look now, though,
Yeah, I am.
because we did send them out for comment
Yeah,
a long time ago.
yeah.
Can you send that electronically to Ken, and Ken, can you put that on there as a draft set?
Yeah, I'd just like to read through it one more time, because I don't think we looked at it very carefully in terms of, whether there are lots of mistakes in it and things like that reflect on us.
Excuse me, Ann, but that's the whole objective, to
No,
find mistakes.
I don't mean technical mistakes, Joe. I'm talking about grammatical and writing mistakes and clarity and things like that I would like to take a look at before we put it up. And then the technical stuff, other people can add.
Yeah, I'll send it out to everyone. mean, we worked on it, Joe worked with me on it a lot, and we went, grammatically, went through it 10 times. But, you know,
Okay,
I'm an engineer, not an English major, so there could be stuff in there.
That's two of us.
Ann's very good. Ann is very good with this stuff. So, Chris, before you send it to Ken, can you send a copy to Ann?
I'll send it to the whole board.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
take a
understand
look.
it's 62 pages, Ann, you'll have to print it out.
I do, I get it.
I gave it to you 6 months ago and a year ago anyway.
I know, and I have it, but I, from what you were saying, it sounds like there may have been considerable review and change, and that can trigger another set of issues with a document, so I'd just like to look at
I
it.
think when I sent it out before, it was final, but it couldn't hurt to send it again.
Okay, let's do that. And let's, everybody review it before our next meeting,
Okay, great.
which is,
June?
funny, the 24th.
Wise butt everywhere.
February 24th is our next meeting. So let's, everybody review it one more time.
February 24th?
Yep,
2 weeks from today.
2
right?
weeks from today.
Yeah, second and fourth.
Okay.
I'll work with you.
Okay.
Chris, we've got engineer's report.
Okay, this is something you all seen before, but I'm showing it again.
Thank you. More color pictures.
I got it.
Can
I
they
got it
afford
already,
you?
Chris. Yep, I got that one.
I know we got a couple things going to get increased discharge,
You're saying-
and one of them is,
Same as you did for last week.
one of them's, what?
What's wrong, Joe?
Okay.
Oh,
But one's, you know, what happens with future hydrogeologic type things if we're gonna get a higher infiltration rate, this type of thing. But this is a town-owned piece of land, like I had said before. It's not really earmarked for anything right now. I think they talked about housing before, but now they're working on housing on a 9-acre piece on Commercial Street.
Yeah.
So this is a viable option. It's a Zone 2 of water, and you can put public-owned treatment works in Zone 2. You can put infiltration beds in Zone 2. You have to do a higher level of treatment, so you have to do reclaimed water treatment. So what that means is you have to go to a higher level, and currently, our plant's designed for certain levels. For Zone 2, we meet pH, we meet BOD, we meet total nitrogen. We have to do a higher level of suspended solids and a higher level of fecal coliform to be able to discharge there. And then anything else, DEP, you know, has the flexibility to change levels or to require additional things not on the list. But from what research I've done, it's doable. They could go up to Class A water, but this is Class B is what this comes under, because it's not water that's coming into human contact like golf course irrigation. And so it lets it go down to Class B, which all that really does is make your fecal coliform go up to 14 fecal coliform per 100 milliliter, whereas Class A is zero, pretty much. So it lets you have some in your sample, but, you know, based on Mark Drainville's presentation, the last meeting, it's a doable upgrade. So it's an option, and it's an option that's a very close by to pump to. You could actually just do a crossing on Carlton Street. You could do a horizontal directional drill, or you could do a and a horizontal directional drill just across 28, 2 short ones, run in the shoulder and stay 10 feet from your water, and then it's all overland. So it'd be an easy, cheap pipe compared to some of these other options of, pumping for, thousands of feet.
Chris, are all these little boxes just laid out plots? There's nothing there?
There are a bunch of little laid out plots that the town took a bunch of them, but there's a bunch of, like, back in the middle that some other person owns, and
They're
it's
old-
like a checkerboard.
If I could, they're old paper roads from an old subdivision from years and years ago.
Okay.
That they still have the layout for.
Okay.
That's all.
They are
Thank you.
paved, you're saying?
I'm sorry?
Or
No,
are
they
not paved?
No, they are not paved. They're
Not-
they're paper streets. They only exist on paper.
Right.
Okay, so that's really empty space.
Yeah, but if you look at the third sheet with the black marker starting at the plant,
Yep.
crossing Carlton, and going along the shoulder, then crossing 28, since the town owns a bunch of those pieces and other people own them, the town would have the right to use the right-of-ways to run their pipe. And so they could actually follow the path I showed, or they could go down the first road or the second road and follow that path. The other thing is, if you look on sheet number 1, there's been talk about doing stuff
Bless
with
you.
Willow Bend. This parcel abuts Willow Bend.
Right.
So you could actually do your piping to and from Willow Bend without going on roads. Without having to dig up, repave, cause all that hassle. You could actually connect right through here.
Have to raise it like 50 feet, but other than that, we're okay.
Yeah. And even if this never happened and Willow Bend did happen, this would probably be
The routing.
It's
the
still a
place to
good
bring
route.
the pipes.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're going all the way up, I don't know, you're going down Quiniquisette, up Simpson's
28.
Mill, you're going up 28. But either way, it's an option that's there that would be a real good benefit.
Chris, where's the well that's on the property?
See the little white, if you're going south of them checkerboard lots.
Yep.
See a little white section?
Yep, okay.
That's the well. And we're actually about, and I got to touch base with Andy Marks to see his feelings on it, because you're supposed to, if you ever go this route with sand beds, the first thing you have to do is contact the water. I mean, DEP makes the final judgment, but you might have to do other studies. But we're 800 to 1,000 feet at the closest point if we built out all beds, which is unlikely you're going to put 12 beds in.
Right. This is good, Chris. This
Yeah,
is a
very
good option.
interesting.
No, it's got potential.
Chris, will these be open beds or are these going to be subsurface?
They'd be, well, you could do either. Probably open.
Is there, if these are going to be subsurface, is there a way to get it out of Zone 2 to get down parallel to Orchard Road outside of the Zone 2? I just know that the monitoring requirements, Stratford Ponds had their leaching facility in a Zone 2, and they moved their leaching facility outside of the Zone 2 because of the DEP requirements for the monitoring, which was excessive.
Wow.
So long-term, if there's the ability to get it outside of the Zone 2, I think there would be a savings on a long-term basis, if we can.
You actually could come down the same route and come down that very first road and put it right in.
I just think it's worth looking into, because I know that the monitoring requirements are much higher being in the Zone 2, because it's going to be drinking water.
But they have a Zone 1 around that well, which is 400 feet. I don't really have that sketched on.
Well, it's got to be inside the Zone 2. So
It
I think that
probably
the
is.
Zone 2 is your further exterior to that
Yeah.
extent of the contribution area.
Yeah, it actually, if I could, I'll delineate the Zone 1, but there is a lot of room left in that outside zone.
If it's possible, just to check that out, because I think that there is, it's pretty extensive, the amount of monitoring that's required for discharging into a Zone 2.
Yeah, when I first looked at it, I looked at that first, and was thinking of coming down Orchard Road and trying to get an easement on the lot down low. And you just gave me the idea when you said that, is come right down one of the paper streets, if you had to. So you'd come across
Yeah.
Carlton, down along the housing authority parcel, because by putting sewer to them, we have the right to access that without an easement. You know, just like we're doing to cut the corner to get to Sea Oaks. So you could run the shoulder, 10 feet from the water, run down that paper street, and you'd be right there. That's actually you should have my job. But yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, it looks like you have the Zone 1 on the third page, lower right corner. I think that's the Zone 1.
Oh, yeah, that is. That is. So that would come out to, yeah, roughly 1, 2. Yeah, I think you're right, that Zone 1
No, that's big,
is contained in the Zone 2.
but it's big, bigger than it looks on this first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, paper road may be the way to go.
Yeah. But it's a piece of land that, you know, I just wanted to put it out there before it gets eaten up by some other purpose, because I've been looking all around for pieces of land to give us possible outs for discharge. And most everyone I found is conservation or has some sort of restriction on it. And,
Yeah, I mentioned the subsurface too, just because if you move it closer to Orchard Road, you're moving closer to residential homes.
Right.
Rather than having the open beds. The open beds may be fine where Chris has got it now, because there's a much better buffer around that. That distance all the way around, it's all undeveloped land.
Right.
But coming closer to Orchard would be better to be subsurface.
yeah, there's some options. I mean, they only actually require 50 feet
Yeah.
back from the property line, and they went 150 on Carlton.
Right.
We got anything else?
And 100 feet isn't much on this plan. Those little dinky lots, they're 50 by 100. So 2 of them small lots is 100 feet. So that's not much. It still leaves you a decent piece of land back there.
All right, we better keep that in mind as we're working our way through disposal rates and stuff.
Okay, I had one other thing I wanted to talk about. I had gotten into some discussion with environmental partners on the actual scope and how we did everything orally in the meeting back and forth. And it might be a better idea to write down what we discussed and give each consultant it so that it is apples to apples.
Yeah, that's what we talked about a
I
while
mean,
ago.
we did a lot of talking, but,
Yeah.
and we said, yeah, do this and do that as far as level of effort. So I threw something together. Thought it made sense. So, we talked in the meeting, did we say the same thing? Did we both remember it the same way? So we put it down like from an engineering kind of point of view, on what would be required engineering-wise to get to where you want it. The 25% design, it's like it could be subjective, so this could take the subjectivity out of it. That way, each one knows exactly what tasks are involved to get that way. And I'll read it so Meredith can understand it. First, this is all just a collection system. I know the upgrade to the plant was kind of a variable. Okay, first it was just for 25%, it outlined it that we'd use like town GIS, utility drawings, LIDAR, and soil data to get areas 2A through E to establish base plans. The survey needs, the geotechnical investigation, borings, wetland delineations, property line, all that would be deferred to the 100%. So you're not doing the survey level at that point, unless I had the aerials ready. You'd identify permitting requirements, you provide plan and profile sheets for all areas, provide general details, pump station details, catch basin, manhole, piping, that type of thing. Provide your 25% opinion of probable cost, which is what you'd be bringing to SRF. Provide up to 5 design review meetings, presentations to the commission, and do the submission of the PEF for the Clean Water SRF program for August. So that would be the same for both, so you know exactly what you're expected to do for 25%. And then going on to the collection system, it basically just outlined every single thing you'll need to do to get to your 100% design, permits, and approvals, right up until the submission of the loan application and everything. But it included all your wetland flagging, your easements for pump stations, sewer crossings, sill elevations, all the required surveying, the boring, and it just, we put it out as days of estimates of what it would take, so you'd both be on the same level of effort. And, you'd 75, you 90, 100% design reviews with the commission, cost estimate would update as you go. And that's about it, but just kind of wanted to put everything on a level playing field. Yeah,
Just
Joe?
one thing, Chris, what's missing is we cannot even finish the 25% without knowing what the cost is going to be to equip the building to handle the flow. And this is strictly collection system with 25 and 100%.
And the thought too on this is, you're gonna put in your plant right now, but like you said, you don't know what your upgrade's gonna be. Are you upgrading it for all 5? Are you upgrading it, like as you discussed last meeting, for the 3, which I actually thought made sense? Because that is the most likely 3 that would get done. But this is just collection system only, just for doing your final plans and permits and everything for your collection system.
No, that's what I noticed, and I didn't know if that was your intention or not.
Yeah.
Now, for the reality of building and for the reality of going after money, we have to somehow get enclosed. Is the processing equipment and tanks and everything for the old phase 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, that's.
Or we don't have an operating plant.
Part of the proposals were to come up separate from the collection is a number of what they think it would cost to design the rest of the plant and what it would cost.
Not the equipment,
Yeah.
not the design. The
Yeah.
equipment, it's designed.
This is good, Chris.
So this is, it details it more and puts it in writing. So it's, because they were sitting taking notes, who knows who took, their notes I'm sure didn't match.
That was my suggestion a couple of weeks ago. Let's get a document in writing that really spells out what we're looking for.
So if the commission's okay with this, I'll send it out to each consultant.
I make the motion that we accept the draft that Chris is presenting today. And any future revisions he may choose to make as designed for 25 and 100% design costs.
And I think usually the 25% is absorbed into the full cost.
Right.
But in our particular case, this is unique where we're gonna stop at 25 and take a look. And then you're gonna decide on where do we go from here.
Well, we're building pools of money is what we're doing.
Yeah. Because right now, really, this is the goal, the initial
Back for the
goal
other
is to get.
Thank you, Glenn.
Take care, Glenn. The initial goal is to generate that number and see where, how big it's gonna be. Or how small, hopefully.
Does anybody have a problem with Chris handing this out to EP and to GHD? No problem.
No.
Okay, well, I'll keep you all in the email loop when I do it.
And if there are any changes, I'd like to hear about them before they are in operation.
Yeah, they may reach out to me and say, hey, we generally add this in 25%, or I generally don't do that until after. But it's just I think this is adequate to generate a cost on each phase. And so everyone's at the same exact level of effort to get there.
Chris, I think it's a great idea. I just have one question. Why didn't we have them both in here at the same time to begin with?
Well, we did.
We just ended up doing it that way, I don't know, at the time, we thought it would be better to have just individually come in.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't
As
really,
opposed to what?
I didn't,
Well, I have done it bringing all of them in so they all hear the same thing, so they can't turn around later and say, well, you told Ken this.
Well, that's why this is
Yeah. I'm just saying
foundational.
in the future, it might make it easier.
I think we still needed a document, though.
No, I agree. I
Yeah.
think the document's a
Yeah,
great
that's,
idea.
that's behind us now, we're ahead of
And
that.
I maybe should have broken this out beforehand. But after discussion afterwards with Ziad, he said, how do you know that
Hey,
you
we
both are
got there.
thinking the same thing?
I agree. I think it's great.
We got there, they got the same shoes now.
Yep. And if it was
Let's
Ken,
move forward instead of discussing what didn't happen.
Done.
if it was Ken, we'd want to shortchange him anyway.
That's true.
Chris, do you mind sending a copy of that to us, or is that proprietary information you want?
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you, Meredith. I'm going to
Okay, great, thank
CC
you.
all the commission members as well as, Rodney and Wayne. And
We approved it?
Yes.
We haven't voted.
Oh, didn't we vote?
No, we have a motion,
It's been seconded, but there's been no.
but we need
We need a vote.
Discussion?
Discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Submit.
Yep.
Done.
Meredith?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Can we talk about the process of selecting the winner of this enterprise? I know that Gottlieb bumped the date by which it's due up by a week, February 7th?
yeah.
February what?
February,
You mean March?
March 7th.
And the reason that is because there's a selectmen meeting that night, and that's the only meeting prior to the deadline.
Okay. So what, we don't need to review all of their proposals
We do.
before then?
No.
No.
The way it's going to work is that's going to be, how are we going to do that?
We can do it after, right?
We
As
can
long
do-
as we have a number.
Do it after, before the 14th.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you're saying that we should submit this to the select board before we review it?
Not really, because they're going to bring their proposals. That's going to generate numbers. And do we say, okay, we're going to use the low number or the high number?
This doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, should we have them come back in and explain their proposals?
They're
Or-
both going to be apples to apples. I think this is being done, the deadline for them to have this is to generate a number for that town meeting article.
Right.
If the numbers, their proposals are pretty far off, I mean, they're both competent consultants. So I think if there's a big difference, you're obviously going to go with the lower one.
Go with the lower number, or are we talking about selecting?
You're not selecting yet because you can't select really until the money's appropriated. Well, you could, but it would be subject to the money being appropriated. The thought was we were going to do this to get a number, but it might not be a bad idea to discuss it before the
Yeah.
before the 21st. I'm not sure why he pushed it up to the 7th. I thought it was that there's a selectmen meeting,
Right.
and that may be the only one before the deadline to submit your numbers. Because the deadline was actually the 21st, not the end of the month.
So are people going to want to see these folks again after we've had a chance to review their proposal?
So wait, the proposal deadline is now March 7th?
Yes.
Okay. And the deadline to submit the number for the warrant article is?
The 21st,
So we have a week. I mean, we have 2 weeks.
yeah.
And the 7th, so the selectmen would look at these numbers before we do?
That's the way I understand it. That's the way in Andy's email, that's the way I understand it. I don't know, do the selectmen meet every single week?
No, every.
Every 2
Every
weeks.
other, okay, so that's why he's doing it, because they must meet, was it the first and third Monday? Or the second? They must meet
They
the
just
7th.
met Monday.
So they must meet the second and fourth Monday.
Well, they can have special meetings too, because they've talked about that, but
So the way the reason it's pushed up must be because that would be presented to the selectmen that night to make a decision on the number.
so that would be presented to the selectmen on the 7th, and we won't meet until the 10th. So we won't see it until after the selectmen have already made a
Why
decision.
wouldn't we be in a joint meeting for such an important thing?
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea, Joe.
Well, we have to make some accommodation here, because that doesn't make sense for us not to see it.
No. I mean, this was just in an email form from Selectman Gottlieb, and the logic, I thought, was because the 21st, they have to have the number in by the 21st. Now, that's the close of the day, that's not at night. So they meet at night, so they'd meet after the deadline. So they have to, and this article is put in by the sewer commission or the selectmen?
Probably both. We did it together last
Did it both? So a joint meeting would make sense. Okay, but that was the logic behind it with the selectmen, that, I mean, unless they called a special meeting.
I'll call Gottlieb and get him to clarify for us what all these dates mean.
Well, keep in mind one thing. What we're asking is a couple of vendors to give us estimates on the cost for a final design package, a 25% shot at it and 100% shot at it. That has nothing to do with the acceptance of it, the application for money, or the spending of money. This is an exercise in information. When you get the information, what you do with it is another set of issues. The selectmen can ask us if we think it makes sense, and if we think it makes sense, and everybody thinks it makes sense, then we can say, yes, let's say it's an arbitrary 100. The selectmen may move to put 100 on the agenda for a vote, but they may also move for only 80 or 120. They are not required to listen to the 100. They are required to make intelligent financial decisions. If they have the opportunity and the time to consider it, they will consider it. And that's out of our bailiwick. We can say we should go ahead. We should not have the authority to say 100 is accurate or inaccurate. That is not our expertise. Our expertise is to try and get everybody together that have those responsibilities, engineering and our accountants, and let them make the financial decision. So we're not here to approve it, we're here to review it.
Right.
Keep that in mind.
I'd like just to be able to review it.
What we
We
could
wouldn't be
do,
reviewing it.
is
If it was presented to a joint meeting, we're reviewing it. You can speak
There-
up anytime you want.
the deadline is noon on the 7th. So we could have each of them submit 8 copies, say 10 copies of their proposal in a sealed envelope by noon on Monday. We could have a meeting after that and have Selectman Gottlieb come as a liaison the afternoon before the selectmen meeting. And then we'd all get to open it up. We'd each have a package, and everyone would have a chance to review. And what's the selectmen's meeting, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock?
6:30.
6:30. Okay, so that would give us, everyone, at least a few hours anyway. It'd give you some time to review. And like Joe said, really, this is just an exercise at this step, is just to pick out a number. So we'd have to discuss that number, and maybe Selectman Gottlieb would present that number to the board that night.
Okay, so you're suggesting we have a impromptu meeting on the 7th,
A special meeting.
special meeting? That sounds good.
Yeah, that's at least, because I just thought that in his email, he made the deadline noon on the 7th, and I'll reiterate that to both consultants, that is in fact the deadline when I send out this scope of work.
Okay. So we not only have a meeting on the 24th of February, but also the afternoon of Monday, the 7th,
At 2 o'clock?
at 2 o'clock, yeah. Okay. That's, unless
And
you
I
have
don't know
more.
if you wanted any other people to come, or maybe an additional selectman to come, or whatever you want, however you want to do it. They can't have a quorum, that's, unless you advertise it that way.
I think the liaison system is how they operate, so.
Okey doke, let's, there's nothing else on the agenda, so may I make a proposal that we adjourn?
So moved.
Bryce?
Okay, let's vote. Everybody agreed? We're adjourned?
Who made the motion?
Al did. Al.
Seconded, Joe?
Joe seconded, and everybody voted yes.
Yes.
I have my chair replaced.
I'll send this stuff out now, because I can remember what I did 10 years ago, but not yesterday.
Yeah.